Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Andrea and today I have my March update. Wait, no, it's April. No, it's May. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Andrea and today I have my April update and May TBR for the Color Me Reading project. This was started by Verity of Red Dirt and Stardust and Samantha from Samantha Pans, and they took inspiration from KaliFab's Monochromatic project pan. I'll have all of them linked down below as usual, and the premise is every month has a color and then you just read books that correspond to that color, whether it's something in the title, the cover, the author's name, like however you can fit that color into the book that you're reading. And it can be a physical copy of a book, it can be an ebook, it can be an audiobook. Like there's lots of different ways that you can get some more reading in with this project. I did manage to read 2 books this month. I know I said I was going to read The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I just didn't get a chance, even though it's like super short, but it is what it is. I have read it before. But I did find I think it's about like a 12 or 13 minute short film based on this story on YouTube. So I'll have that link down below if you want to check it out, because it was pretty well done. And if there wasn't like a whole lot of information about the actual short film, I'm pretty sure it was done by a high school group or something, but it was good. I'll leave it linked down below if you want to check it out. So then the other 2 books that I read, oh, and if you couldn't tell by the cover of this book and the title, April's color was yellow. So I did manage to read 2 books, 2 new books for April. The first book that I read is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. It's about a group of Black women in London, and they all have different sexualities, different gender identities, but they are all connected to each other in some way, and each chapter is devoted to one specific woman. So the characters will pop up in each other's stories, but they only get like one section that's focused solely on them. And then at the end, it's kind of one of those things where there's one focus event that, while not everything revolves around it, it is kind of like the catalyst for how some of these characters, or how you figure out how some of these characters know each other and things like that. It did take me a little bit to get into it, just because the way it's written is very different. So there's no punctuation pretty much, and each sentence, instead of a period, each sentence is just its own paragraph. And it took a minute to get used to reading something that wasn't in what I would describe as the typical narrative style. But once you get used to it, it flowed well, and it was interesting. And once I think I got about to the 3rd woman's story, that's when it started being okay, now I'm really invested in this book. And I should note, not only are these women all different sexualities and different gender identities, but they also are different. There's at least 3 different generations. Actually, I think there might be 4 different generations represented in this book. So it was interesting it's not all about millennials or boomers or however you want to describe the different generations. But it was a very good book. I would recommend that one. So the second book that I read for April was The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stig Larsen. I actually really ended up enjoying this book, with a couple of little criticisms. But the book takes place in Sweden. The main male character, Mikhail, he is a journalist who has been convicted of libel because he had a story on this big financial entrepreneur that he couldn't corroborate, and he got convicted of libel in court. So he's kind of like disgraced a little bit. He's trying to lay low, and this old industrialist named Henrik Wenger, he's been kind of following Mikhail a little bit, and he, once this whole court case situation ends, he hires him to dig into a 40-year-old unsolved murder of his niece, and he uses the case that Mikhail just lost. He uses that as bait, saying like, oh, you couldn't prove that, but I've got some juicy secrets on this guy because he used to work for me, so you do this for me and I'll tell you what it is. The cover story is he's writing Henrik's autobiography, but he's really just investigating this murder. And the other main character, Elizabeth, is like a hacker, and she ends up teaming up with Mikhail because she's a good researcher and he needs help. I mean, there's a lot that I'm skipping over, but it's a pretty long book and I don't want to get too in-depth into it. So my first criticism, the libel story, or the story where Mikhail has he knows that this other guy, Wennerstrom, is a bad dude, but he can't prove it. So it starts off with that, and then the mystery of the unsolved murder gets solved, spoiler alert, and then the last like couple chapters deal with the ending of the whole Wennerstrom thing. Those parts I thought were really boring, and it took me, once I got past that part in the beginning section and I got into the actual like Wenger family and that whole mystery, then it was when I was like, I really want to keep reading this. And then after that whole thing gets concluded and then they go back to the Wennerstrom thing, I was like, this is kind of boring. Like, I don't care about this part that much. But that was my first criticism. My second criticism, so Mikhail is like mid-40s and Elizabeth is mid-20s. And I'm sure you can guess what happens. And I think that's gross. I just think it's gross when young women are like falling all over themselves for older men. And that part I was just like, ugh. I did not care for that part at all, but it wasn't a huge portion of the book, but it was still in there enough that I was pretty annoyed by that part, but what are you gonna do? Like, a lot of times I think that's just wish fulfillment on the part of the author, because like the guy who wrote this was, I mean, he's dead now, but when he wrote it, I think he was in like his mid-50s or whatever, so he's obviously connecting more with the Mikhail character than the Elizabeth character, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I did watch the American movie. It was on Netflix. Now, I know that the movie catalogs for Netflix are different in different countries, so I don't know if you're in Canada, I don't know. I know they have different stuff sometimes, so it might, if you're not in the US, you might not be able to access it through Netflix if you have it, but I couldn't find the Swedish version on any like free platform, and I didn't really want to pay for it, so I watched the American version, and it was good. It was like 2.5 hours long, but it didn't feel like 2.5 hours long. I mean, they obviously truncated a lot of events that happened in the book just because the book is like 630 pages or whatever. I mean, and the movie was already 2.5 hours long. The biggest thing that I actually really appreciated about the movie is that even though it was like the US/American version or whatever, they didn't Americanize it. Like, it still took place in Sweden. Not all of the characters, because Daniel Craig was the lead actor who played Mikhail, and he didn't sound like he was trying to sound Swedish. He just sounded like, you know, his British accent. But for the most part, everyone, and I'm not Swedish, so I don't know how well they did, but they all had accents, even like the American actors who were in the movie. Like all of the signs and stuff were in Swedish. So it was like one of those things where you're supposed to suspend disbelief and like know that they're all talking to each other in Swedish, but the movie is in English. But I did really appreciate the fact that they didn't try to like make it, instead of taking place in Sweden, like make it take place someplace in upstate New York or something like that. You know what I mean? So I did appreciate that a lot because I don't know. I just don't like when you don't have to Americanize everything. Let's just put it that way. But they did keep, I mean, it's a pretty big part of the book, but they did keep the Elizabeth and Mikhail romance, which I don't want to see that. Like, you can call me a prude, that's fine. I just don't want to see 25-year-old women like screwing 45-year-old men. That's really not my thing. So that part I didn't care for. Whether you read the book or watch the movie, I'm not gonna get into too much. I'm not gonna get into any really detail, but there are some very disturbing and graphic scenes dealing with not only murder, but all sorts of other unsavory, unpleasant things. I don't know how else to say it without like throwing up trigger warnings everywhere, but I think you get the idea. And yeah, so that, I mean, it's kind of part and parcel of the mystery thriller crime genre. Like that kind of stuff happens in these kind of books and movies. But if that's not, if you're really, really affected by that, I would not recommend the book or the movie at all. Anyway, I've rambled on about this book and this movie for way too long, but let's just, if graphic stuff doesn't bother you and you like mystery thrillers, you might really like this, because it took me forever to actually read this. I've had this paperback probably for like at least 5 years, and this is the first time I've ever read it, and I did really like it. So there's that. Okay, so now my May TBR. The color for May is white. I have 6 books. Again, my goal is just gonna be 2, but, and also my updates for this usually go up, they're scheduled to go up like the 12th or the 13th of the month, so the middle of the month. And a lot of times, like I'm just weird, and I don't like starting to read the next month's books before I do my update. So I've decided like I'm going to do the month's color from update to update, not necessarily through the entire month. So like May's color is white. I haven't started reading any of them, and I'm filming this on the 11th. So now once I film this and show you what I potentially could read, I'll have until like, you know, the 10th or 11th of June or whenever I film my next update to read them. It's like not an important distinction at all, but I just felt like I needed to say that's how I'm doing it. Anyway, okay, May's is white. So the first one I have, and I don't know if I've read this. This is so bad. I don't remember if I've read this or not. This is called Happy Birthday or whatever. It's by Annie Choi. It's just a memoir type book about her growing up with her Korean family in California. So that's the first potential book. This next one is one that I know I'm going to read because I really want to read it. It's The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. I know this got turned into a movie. Who was it? Amanda Sternberg? So I'm going to read this, and then hopefully I can somehow watch the movie as well, but I'm going to read this one. And then I have Wait Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. I haven't read this, but I have mixed feelings about it. Like, I've seen a lot of good things about this book, but then at the same time I've seen a lot of criticisms because it's written by a white woman. So I still do want to read it, but like I said, it's one of those things where I kind of have mixed feelings about actually reading it, because I feel like I should read something by like an actual Black author, but at the same time I already have this book, so I should try to read it. Then I have this short story collection, Everything That Rises Must Converge by Flannery O'Connor. I read a few Flannery O'Connor short stories in college and I really liked them. And then I've had this for a while and again, never read it, so I'm gonna try to read that. Then I have Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. I think, isn't this, I feel like this is like an Amazon series or something now with David Tennant and what's that guy's name? And some other guy. David Tennant and some other guy. But I want to read this. I mean, I always hear good things about this, so I want to read this. And then this last one I just kind of threw in there. I doubt I'm going to get to it. It's just one of those, like, I think I got this at Barnes & Noble or something. It's the ultimate encyclopedia of mythology. I love mythology. Like, I was always so upset in college because I am an English major. Like, this was a class that was potentially available, but they never offered it the entire time I was in college, and I was a little salty about that because it's something that I probably would have really enjoyed, but that's neither here nor there. So I mean, let's be honest, I'm probably not going to read this right now, but just in case I have a lot of free time and I've finished all my other books, this is in here just as kind of like a fantasy self-reading selection. So, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to do some editing because this is already like 25 minutes long. So that was my update for April and my TBR for May for the Color Me Reading project. As always, let me know if you've read any good books down below, because as few books as I get to read or have time to read, I really do love reading. So I hope you all have a great day. I hope you're staying safe and sane and healthy, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.